Hey everybody, my name is Lance Scott, and I am starting this channel, the Sober Curious Queer Inquiry, because I wanted to create a channel um, that was something that I felt like I needed 3, 4, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, actually, but just wasn't out there for me. So I want to start by telling brief a brief history of my relationship with alcohol. The first time I ever got buzzed was when I was about 13. It was during a Christmas holiday. I had a lot of stress and anxiety about relatives coming over and asking me a lot of questions about, did I have a girlfriend? What sports did I like? Yada, yada, yada. I always felt like a fish out of water. I always felt like there was something wrong with me. Somehow I got into the liquor cabinet and wow, suddenly I'm experiencing euphoria. I'm experiencing like, okay, this is why it's the most magical time of the year. This is why people fucking love it so much. And all my anxiety and self-consciousness was gone. And I was able to enjoy my relatives and even see them as other vulnerable human beings, and then it wore off. And then I couldn't get to the liquor cabinet. And then I felt like crap. And even then I knew if I could get back to the liquor cabinet, I would feel better again, but that just wasn't going to happen that year. Fast forward in high school, I drank a lot with my friends. I was into the punk rock movement, so we'd go out and go to punk rock shows and get really drunk. It's very lucky that nothing bad happened. I used to do a lot of drinking and driving when I was a teenager, very scary. I moved to San Francisco in 1982, so moved here, came out as a gay man, had a lot of sexual experiences for the first time, and wah wah wah, the AIDS crisis hit. And I'd been going to clubs and bars, and it was a very, very scary time. And to be honest, at that time, a lot of us, got very healthy very quick. We did a lot of fasting, we did a lot of crystals, we got into meditation, and a lot of that was good. I kind of became a spiritual slut for a while, and I tried a lot of different things. I was chanting and doing metaphysical things. I went to a metaphysical church and wasn't drinking a lot because I was making sure that my health was the best it could be because so many of my friends and people in my community were getting sick and dying. Then in my 30s, I had a boyfriend who was a wine aficionado. And I thought he was a raging alcoholic at the time because I had done Al-Anon and some 12 steps and had learned that alcoholics were people who had this disorder, this disease, and um, I heard alcoholics often describe themselves as the piece of shit that the universe revolved around, until they got into recovery, and still that was an issue. In Al-Anon, we talked a lot about the disease being in the room, so people who drank often were very suspicious to me. And he kind of busted all that for me. He was like, oh, he had spent a lot of time in France. He's like, that's just an American idea, this whole alcoholic thing. Look at the French, look at the Italians. They have such great health, so much better than Americans. And, I kind of saw that, as much as I love 12 step, I could see there was a cultishness about it, a cultishness of thinking. I had a lot of great phrases and bumper stickers in my head. A lot of them are, very positive, live and let live, one day at a time, all of those things. But I got into, drinking wine with dinner often. And we broke up, and I moved in with some roommates and had another roommate who drank wine often. And this was in my 30s, and I began to drink wine often. And for me, when I drank home alone, which was often, uh, I really tried to keep it to half a bottle because that seemed okay. That seemed like that was in the zone. Fast forward, I kept drinking more and more of the wine bottle, and then went through a period where I would leave a little bit at the bottom of the bottle so I could say I didn't drink the whole bottle. Um, got into a period where somebody convinced me that vodka would help you lose weight, so I got into vodka, and things got scary really quick. And I remember trying to stop and even crying, bringing home a bottle of vodka, and now I'm drinking half of that and crying because I couldn't stop. And so I went to my doctor. They put me in, these kind of rehab things that were very 12-steppy, and I was in there hearing about, a lot of drugs that I didn't relate to. And I could see the connection between my addiction and their addiction. Drugs are drugs, but there was a difference. I didn't totally felt like I belonged. Um, I tried a program called moderation management. I took a month off drinking. That was kind of crazy looking back because I stopped drinking so that I could drink. So it was very painful not to drink. And then when I was moderating, uh, it was just all painful. It wasn't really working for me. I would go to AA and hear amazing stories, but I couldn't relate. Um, the stories were dramatic. The stories were DUIs and jail and you know crazy stories, page-turning stories. And my story was that I found myself drinking every night. At this point, usually a bottle of wine. But I was able to stop. I have to say, I had good guardrails. In the 80s when we all got healthy, I got into yoga, I got into meditation, I was going to the gym. Um, I work at a nonprofit. I was doing well. I'm a visual artist, so I was accomplished, was doing good. But, evenings after a long, hard day, I was drinking my wine. I was living my French Italian lifestyle. And did I enjoy my evenings? I did. But my mornings were uh, toxic and depressed and relied a lot on caffeine to get me through the day. I often felt tired and wired throughout the day. And caffeine was my green light. Red wine was my red light. Let's make it all stop. Um, and so it was frustrating, and sometimes I would check out 12-step meetings when I felt like I didn't know what else to do because there weren't any other options. And I had people tell me that I hadn't hit a rock bottom yet and yada, yada, yada. And um, this is what I'll say about a rock bottom. My rock bottom was I realized I was never going to have a rock bottom. That my life of drinking more than I wanted to, but not enough to make it so bad that I had to quit, could go on for the rest of my life. And so somehow, some way, probably I was Googling, things on alcohol and sober curious, and I found Annie Grace and This Naked Mind, and that changed everything. So I got the book, um, This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and I read it. And the very helpful thing about that book is that you didn't have to quit right away. You didn't have to quit at all. In fact, you could have moderation goals. And I finally found a path that was workable, that, a door that I could walk into, a place that I could start. And that was huge. So I want to highly recommend that book. Again, it's This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And then I had another friend, good friend, who I was very open with my wine habit. She also had a wine habit. And together we did the 30-day alcohol experiment. It's something that you can do on your own or you can do live. I highly recommend doing it live. And for 30 days, you commit to do your best to not drink. And every day there's a lesson. And it's everything from why we like to drink, alcohol and happiness, alcohol and dating and sex, the power of belief. And this whole process is about cognitive dissonance. So for a lot of us, we have parts of ourselves that like to drink, that want to drink, that have a lot of reasons, and then we have a part of us that doesn't want to drink. And so we're two people in one body. And what this process does, and why it works so, I would almost say magically, is that slowly but surely, the subconscious gets the memo of what's going on. And my experience was that I slowly but surely felt like I was waking up from the matrix, that I was becoming one person instead of two. And I can't tell you how amazing that is, and how that has been the big domino in my life that has helped me with my depression and anxiety. I am now probably the happiest I've ever been. My creative process has gotten so much better. My career, my relationships. I just feel so much better most of the time. And this was 2 years ago that I did that month long. I did 30 days. I was able to not drink those 30 days. And and then I thought I was good. You know, I thought I woke up from the matrix, I'm good. And then I started having what in this naked mind we call data points. So then I would drink. I'd get the cravings would come back, and we learn why all this happens. This is all evidence-based, this is all science-based. And when I would drink, I really paid attention to the before, during, and after. Why I wanted to drink, what was really happening when I was drinking, and how I felt the next day. And through that process of not slipping, not having a relapse, but of having a data point where I was deciding to drink, and I was going to do it mindfully, and I was going to be curious and compassionate with myself. Over time, I slowly woke up um, to the fact that I just don't want to drink. That, you know, I see alcohol for what it really is and what it really does, and I see the cost benefits. And I put alcohol down and I walked away. So I'm almost a year completely alcohol free. The first year, so we're talking 2 years, my first year, I probably had about 10 data points. I filmed a lot of them. I filmed the before, during, and after. And then it left me, you know, alcohol left me. And so I want to put the word out. I love Annie Grace. I think she's the Buddha of the sobriety world. You know, she knew something was wrong. You can hear about her own story. She knew alcohol wasn't serving her, and she took a year off. She quit trying to quit, and she studied, you know, all the science around alcohol. And after a year, she just woke up to the truth about alcohol and became giddy, like I did, and put it down. She downloaded the book, and very quickly it became huge. And long story short, it's now published, it's available. So I really want to put the word out to my queer brothers and sisters. You know, I'm in the Naked Mind community, and we're there, but we're a minority. You know, Annie Grace is a wonderful, lovely, heterosexual, middle-aged, educated woman. And you'll see that the majority of folks in her group are very similar. So this video is just to put out the word that there is another way, It doesn't have to be AA. And on this channel, I want to talk about other books and other people and other issues. If you have any questions or thoughts, please let me know, and I'll continue to talk about this. I hope to do interviews of other queer folks who have found other paths towards sober curiousness and moderation and living alcohol and drug free. So I'm going to stop there, and please let me know what you think and if there's any way that I can answer questions or point you in a direction that might be helpful. All right, thanks.